John, you got one job.
Yeah.
That's where I
Okay.
go.
We'll start over again. Tawy, hello. It's good to see you, and thank you for giving up your time.
That's okay. It's nice to see you, John.
Yeah, well, what we're going to do here is I would like to talk to you about your practice in relationship to an event I'm doing with the printmakers and fine art photography. So it's about the relationship between photography and printmaking, which is a well-known one. So let's first of all, let's talk about your large-scale cyanotypes. And
Yes.
I like to refer to them as blueprints. In your case, I like to refer to them as blueprints. Are you okay with that?
Yes, of course. Until I learned the process of cyanotype making, I thought it was right for me to include it into my practice when I was doing my master's course in visual arts illustration. And for me, it was a way of paying homage to my ambition of becoming a draftsman and a designer by looking at the traditional approach to those professions. And in the end, I never expected to make cyanotypes. At the beginning, I thought that it was simply, blue paper with white ink until I realized of the photo developing side of it. I was very intrigued, but also very daunted by the task ahead of me, especially by the fact that the work encompassed ambition, and I wanted to make the work as large as possible and to make it as complex and technical. And the cyanotype process kind of making the blueprints kind of solidified that then as being an addition to the complexity of the project that I had ahead of me.
Have you got any examples perhaps you could show us?
Yes, of course. I mean, I have one on show right now on my back. That was one of the first I ever made, but not the number one. The first one I ever made was this one here.
Okay. Yes.
Which was drawn on the negative in this case, which, if you can see properly the image, is essentially the base column of, I think it was the suspension bridge in San Francisco, and then another structure then in front of it, because the whole project involves looking at many existing designs of bridges in this case. Bridges was one area that I was focusing on. And I was putting them on top of each other, these drawings, so you could sort of evaluate the structural integrity of all of them at the same time instead of looking at multiples. And I discovered that acetate gave a very good result in the end, but it was not the nicest material to work on. And in the end, the most common material that I used as the negative to hand draw on was tracing paper.
Yes.
I also used aged tracing paper, and the image at my back is a section of a ship I was drawing, the Queen Mary, and that tracing paper was maybe around 4 decades old, and it gave off a very old, rustic-looking appearance, and I ended up toying with that and experimenting with it many times to get the exposure right. See, that is a very underexposed image. You can barely see it, but it stands as one of the earlier attempts, and it just showed how difficult the process was, but also how enjoyable and rewarding the results and the outcomes were for the different.
Very mysterious, and the fact that it is underexposed, and sometimes these unpredictabilities are quite interesting, aren't they?
Yes, of course. There's quite a lot of them.
The thing I think that we're trying to look at is Tony Lee, printmaker. He's going to be talking to the students about making stencils and using resists.
Yeah.
Could you share with us your blueprint techniques and perhaps some of your instruments that I know you've collected over all these years?
Yes, definitely. Well, having a whole family history of engineers, architects, and teachers and scientists, I've managed to inherit quite a lot of old tools, and it's these tools that made me have the interest of exploring design and engineering and architecture and naval architecture, and then reusing these tools. And I have quite a few here. I have some very recent ones that I've been given as gifts, new ones such as these two. Like I have architectural stencils like Linex, as well as different various stencils that are made in the US, which are very good. More here. This is a very old Linex, and then I have multiple French curves as well, which are very good. Some more aged standard graphs. Yeah, these are very old as well. Yes. But I think the most intriguing tools of all I have are the drawing instruments, which I've only used a couple of times because they're quite hard to use. And these are like the sort of, I think this is early 20th century tools that belong to my grandfather, who was a mining engineer. And you can see
Oh yeah,
the
amazing, yeah.
yeah, so that's in a velvet case. I think I've used these maybe once, and then I have this drawing instrument box, which was given to me by my tutor, whose grandfather was a telephone engineer, and she entrusted me to, well, to I guess to use them because I don't think she ever had the ability to use them. But these are very fancy tools.
Oh yeah.
These Some of these tools are even ivory and silver, and they sort of work in the same way like a dip pen would work or a quill. The only difficult thing about it is lining it up with rulers because you get a lot of smudging and stuff going on. But apart from that, I use a lot of like rotary pens and like micron pens, and they were all used on tracing paper in the end.
Do
But
you
yeah,
prefer,
using these resists definitely helped with getting the symmetry right and giving more of a satisfying outcome to when I was making these complex, structures.
do you have any particular ink that you like to use in terms of it being opaque? Because the opaqueness
Oh
is
yes,
kind of important,
yes,
isn't it, regarding
so
size?
yeah. So of course, I was told by you, John, and I think it was you yourself who suggested using opaque pens, which are these.
Yes.
This is an opaque Zig pen. It's made in Japan, and they are being sold again. Because when I went to the shop to try and buy them, there was only 3 left, and they were the only 3 that were ever being sold there again. They discontinued them, and the 3 pens lasted me for the entire year. But I also used other pens, and it turned out that the big opaque pen is definitely the best at blocking the most light. So when I was making the drawings and then exposing that to light, and then exposing it to a sheet of paper underneath, I think this is the best pen that was blocking out the light to give off those clean lines. And yeah, they're very nice to use, very satisfying. And this is a fine pen. They have a few variations of thicknesses.
In the early days of photography, and they used to block out large negatives, they used to use liquid opaque, and it was a plum color. So people will assume it's going to be black, but it's not.
No, it's like a reddish brown color. But I was personally a big fan of. I was a big fan of the color red anyway. I really liked how it looked in tracing paper, and I ended up using that as the artwork as well. Getting this structure looking in a reddish brown, there's something really nice and authentic about it, because that was the whole project, was to make all the artwork look quite old and authentic and traditional. And Cyanotype was that, alongside the drawings, which are on old paper that I made, that really represented the subject at its best, at looking authentic.
Absolutely, and I think it resonates, and it's and also using older instruments, these beautiful instruments, brings you closer to the subject. I can really relate to that. So it's been difficult, hasn't it, with this lockdown and stuff? I mean, I don't know if you've got some advice that you can give to the students during this difficult period. Is there some kind of advice you might be able to offer them?
Yeah, I would suggest, from someone who lives in a very small room right now, I've managed to hang up as much work as I can by just using like wires suspended from side to side of the walls and hanging up drawings. Because if you keep your artwork up in view all the time, it will really get you motivated to getting out and developing your practice. Also, get to invest in getting sketchbooks for different subjects. So I have sketchbooks for my writing and my fashion designs, furniture designs, and then even like inventions and stuff. I have ones for each specific thing, so I can interchange between each one. Whenever I get tired of one or the other, or if I get to like a block of no more ideas in one or the other. And then also just writing in your journal, because I used to write. I wrote just way too much in my journals when I was doing my MA. And a lot of people struggled with their journals, but for me, it was a solace, and it was some way that I could go to really vent my anger whenever I got really bad results with my cyanotypes. It was just really satisfying to write, my feelings in it, because in the end, it's all useful in the end for your, for your work, because it shows all the things that go right and go wrong with your work. And for me, when I was making the blueprints, writing the journal was one place that I could find some peace, I guess. So I would suggest just keep going at your journal, and even when you're having a bad day, just like keep at it, keep writing in the journal about all the frustrations you have, because it will be relevant at some point. And with the era that we're going through right now will at one point be in the history, and we'll always wonder back at a time when we were all in a lockdown. It's it's quite extraordinary.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that as well. I think it's a mistake to wait for better times. I think what we need to do is, inspiration comes after doing work. So just keep working, keep doing things, keep writing
Yeah.
in the journal. That kind of works well. Well, that's been really interesting. Have you got any more examples you could show us before we end?
Yes, of course. So in the end, I think I produced somewhere around 50 cyanotypes, so maybe more. Spent quite a lot making them, but I have no regrets. In fact, my biggest regret is not spending more on them, because to make them, it took a lot of time and patience. But here we have one of the earlier large ones I made. I think this is the first I think this is an 8.2 size, and it just showed like the things that didn't go well. So you can see all the markings on it, and even the finger marks on it, because this involved, when I exposed it and put it into the two chemicals, or the one, there was the one chemical in the trays, because I had to make them in sections, because the artwork was so large. I had to make it on sections, which was something that I didn't intend, but it was just something I had to deal with in the end. But it made it a little more challenging in the end, of course. And you can see all these finger marks when I was pushing into the water, and that's something I ended up changing and not doing at all. And then you can see marks here and like other scratches, which are things left on the glass, because to make this work, you have to put the negative on it and then put the huge pane of glass on it to compress it, to get the line as crisp as possible. And one of the results was, if the glass wasn't clean, so if the glass was coated in the cyanotype chemical or the foreign bodies, it would then obviously leave the mark on the paper then, which, I mean, it did like leave really interesting markings on it. But at the time, I was way too stubborn to accept any of that. So I was always cleaning the darkroom facility, spotless, to make sure that all the results came out, as well as it could be. And there's another example here of the stern of the Aquitaine ship I was doing, which this is an actual ship, a historical ship that I took a lot of inspiration from, and then I ended up making my own design of it, my own concept of the ship, and overlaid it with the original one. And on this, you can see like certain marks on it, such as like up here, which was I think it was a large scratch on the glass, which ended up showing up on the paper then. Yeah. But you also have like some areas where are really clear, and then you have such as up here in this sort of promenade area here, and then some areas which aren't that clear, such as like here at the rear where things get fuzzy. And I never really managed to work out why that was. And I remember writing in the journal that it could have been either down to timing, that I didn't dry the paper properly, or that the ink wasn't thick enough in that specific area. There's so many possibilities, and in the end I just had to accept the results, and I didn't more variations of it. But I'm glad I have it, and I have that evidence now of what can go wrong and what will go wrong.
Some people have said about cyanotype, it's both really easy to do, but really, really hard to perfect. And you have to go with
time right, yeah. So obviously these were all done in a specific timing. This one here, the first one I ever made, that was done on a specific time, and then I used different tracing papers then, and they obviously gave off different results.
Right.
So you needed to get that right, and sometimes I got different tracing papers without realizing the different GSM, and they gave off different results.
Were you able to write this up in your notebooks or anything, or your technical details?
Technical details, yeah, I wrote up everything, every single timing.
Yeah.
When I was putting stuff in and exposing it to 10 minutes to 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And yeah, but I think that the most difficult thing was the fact that I only had the darkroom for a specific amount of time.
Okay, well, I understand you're Welsh and your first language is Welsh. I'd like to wish all the students best of luck in these difficult times. In English, perhaps you might want to wish them good luck in Welsh.
Yeah, I would say pob lwc ar dyfodol, cadwch ati ar credigwydd.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Diolch. Thank you.
See you soon.
See you soon, John.
Bye-bye.